they can get AI to write and even speak sometimes, to do that for them. But what they're not able to do is they're not able to connect the dots with what does the human on the other side actually feel.
Welcome to the pod. It's nice to have you on.
Yeah, mate. It's a pleasure to be here. Appreciate being invited.
It's good. It's good.
Yeah,
Obviously, busy start to the year, and we're back again. Obviously, the world of sales. It's kind of wipe the boards clean, and we go again.
Well, it's like momentum's easy to lose, isn't it? Well, it's hard to gain. It's very easy to lose. I think. We've been around the block for a few years now. Like, it happens every year. As my old boss used to say, is like Christmas is every year. So just get used to it. It just will happen. It's annoying.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, obviously, Chris, we've met a few times. We know each other. I think there's a fair few SDRs and SDR leaders in the world that probably know you. But for everyone who doesn't, give us the quick who are you and what's your name and where'd you come from? No.
Yeah, classic. Sorry if I've completely ruined your LinkedIn feeds over the last couple of years, guys. So Chris, my background is I was an SDR leader. Well, I was an SDR, then an AE, SDR leader 3 times over at 3 different SaaS businesses. Also, just super lucky that I got to work at 3 businesses that raised a load of cash, had really good product that allowed them to raise a load of cash, and then meant that they could hire a really good boss for me to learn from, basically. It was 99.9% luck that I chose those businesses. The first one I chose because they did Feed Me Fridays, free lunch on a Friday. I had no idea. I had no idea why I wouldn't choose that business at that point 15 years ago. But then, fast forward, I guess, to 3 years ago, I decided to leave and start my own training business. Essentially, I always loved working with SDRs and SDR leaders. Felt like the space was underserved in terms of like enablement. So decided to follow my passions, and that's what I do now.
Very nice, and do it very, very well, must I say. But do you just go back to your first point? Do you think having a big brand, big name, there's loads of market noise about the product or the raise you've just done? Does that help being a salesperson, to go to market?
100%. I think if you've got a big brand to back you, I would say or a brand that is extremely well known, whether it's the company is big or not. I think that's a huge competitive advantage in sales, right? So for example, if I'm calling from my business, which is a 1-person business, and saying, hey, this is Chris Ritson sales training, not that the business is called that, or I'm calling from Gong, or I'm calling from Salesforce, then I've got an immediate competitive advantage because the person on the other side probably knows the brand, and familiarity breeds trust. So they're probably more open to having a conversation with someone from there, even in the early days of a deal. I think that it just, especially in this market where people are so risk averse, they want comfort in knowing that what they're buying is probably gonna work, even though it might not be the newest, flashiest, coolest thing. It's still probably going to get them 90% of the job done.
Yeah, it's like the old, what is it? No one got fired for buying ABM or whatever. It's safe. It's people know it, and it's kind of just makes it a bit easier to sell, I guess. But anyway, obviously, you mentioned you're coaching SDRs, teams all the time. You've seen, I imagine, pretty firsthand this big shift in the market. Now, but in the last 6 months, everything that's going on due to automation and AI SDRs and outbound and poor outreach. We obviously interviewed you for our kind of B2B trends report back in the last year, talking about what the big shifts are in 2026. And I think a big part of that, not just from yourself, but everyone else's perspective, is like this human comeback, and actually people are craving that kind of human connection, where it's events and video and telephone and everything else. You talked about something called relationship revenue, and how using AI to remove manual work and getting SDRs back to what they do best. What's that whole concept of relationship revenue?
Yeah, I think it's for me. It's just it builds on. I think a lot of people have heard about predictable revenue, obviously, with Aaron Ross, and I think Aaron Ross is great, and I think predictable revenue is great. It's almost it's almost timeless, right? And I think all good things that are timeless are generally pretty good. Just people have just heard of it a lot, so it's not the newest, flashiest thing. I think with predictable revenue though, like the downside of it is that it's so numbers focused, it forgets, or it's interpreted by the person who's implementing it without the prospect in mind on the other side. And my belief, right, and with like relationship revenue is yes, like predictable revenue can take you so far, but only if you're putting the prospect kind of the epicenter of the who you reach out to, when you reach out to them, what you're saying when you are reaching out to them, how you're following up with them, all of that sort of stuff. Whereas predictable revenue is just about scaling the number ultimately at all costs. One of those costs, I think what we found, especially in SaaS, is in fact, SaaS everywhere, is that we've sacrificed like the relationship with the buyer and the buyer's experience in that sales cycle, because
Yeah. I think buyers they're almost pulling away, I think, a little bit, aren't they? Because they're seeing, you're just a touch point in their cadence, you're just a number on their outbound sequence. Do you actually care about them? Do you actually know it?
Yeah, they ultimately, I think they know it. It's kind of like, I think like me and you saw this 10 years ago where outreach and sales loft came along from an automation perspective, and overnight that allowed salespeople to message hundreds of thousands of people, regardless of who they were, all at the same time. The downside, and amazing, we could all follow up and message loads of people, but the downside of that was how much damage it did to the buyer's experience on the other side. But we didn't care about that because we've got KPIs and a target to hit, and we're freaking out about that. Like, it's normal human behavior. So I think with relationship revenue, or like as I kind of would refer to it as, then that's about shifting from like the predictable model in terms of like what do you want. It's more about like what does the buyer want on their side. When do they want to be targeted? How do they potentially want to be targeted? And then how can we go about doing that in a more effective way? That's really what I'm getting at when I'm talking about.
And is that as a result of, I would say, AI adoption? Everyone's talking about AI, and obviously I have my personal views on the whole AI SDR and how it is just email automation on steroids. And I think the challenge we've seen as an agency is everyone's got access to the same data tools, everyone's got access to the same 6 or 7 signals of the mergers, the acquisitions, the senior leadership change. So therefore, all that content is really personalized, generic personalized in terms of it's the same message, congratulations on a new job role, congratulations on new funding, whatever else. So to your point, it's still pumping out hundreds of thousands, but they're claiming it's personalized, but the reality is it's the same personalization that everyone's sending. So I guess what are you seeing that like now it's breaking, that's where the relationships get more and more valuable?
Yeah, I think it's becoming more and more valuable because like, ultimately my belief is like your only competitive advantage is going to be you and your skill set, and then but most importantly how you're able to execute on that skill set consistently, basically, right? I think that's what people don't, and we probably we both bought loads of tools in the past, and we've had the thing in the back of our mind like, I just really hope that this just smashes it and takes all the pressure off just for a week, just like and then you roll it out and you're like, nope. It's not
still going,
not done what it said on the tin, right? But or quite what it said on the tin. And then you blame yourself because you're like, I must have just not set it up in the right way, or whatever that is. But yeah, I think like ultimately it comes down to this, like the salesperson and their ability not just to execute on the hard skills like cold calls and talk tracks and writing, or writing and stuff like that, and following up. Actually, I think what's becoming more and more valuable now is the soft skills, right? If I know this sounds really strange, but if you go back like 50 years to like when our parents were our age, well then for my parents went to university and they got ridiculed for going to university by their families, but it was a really rare thing. So the degree was super useful and
Yeah,
and 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 helpful. But then everyone went to uni, so degrees became less valuable. It's kind of exactly the same as what we've seen in sales. Is like everyone kind of, generally speaking, knows, can source information around hard skills like how to do cold calls and emails, and they can get AI to write and even speak sometimes for, to do that for them. But what they're not able to do is they're not able to connect the dots with what does the human on the other side actually feel, and how are we reacting to that, and how are we making them feel more comfortable and trust us more, etc., etc. So we kind of like moved almost away from that over the last like 5 to 10 years in our quest for more quantity, and we've forgotten like the core essence of that relationship the person needs to feel with the seller.
yeah. It, and actually, I think there's a level after that. I'm a big fan of this. I've always talked about this, and I try to encourage our teams to do it as much as possible. I genuinely think actually that's probably something Punch do very, very well. But part of the reason now is sales leaders or and senior C-suite, the metrics, the KPIs they set are volume based, number of meetings sat booked, which is great. But I think people that have done it for a long time or have been there kind of know that outbound done well. Yes, you need to get meetings. Yes, you need to build, get those opportunities and introduce AEs. But actually, all the 50 other 100 people you spoke to this month who aren't in market, building relationships, what they're using, who they partner with, when's their renewal dates, how much they're spending on that, like nurturing that properly. That's super valuable in 6 months' time. But a lot of SDRs don't care about it now because they've got a meeting to get booked by the end of the week for their numbers.
Yeah,
And I think that's the bit that's missing. Like they hear like, oh no, we're not interested. Okay, cool, bye. Well, actually, let me just spend another 10 minutes with you on the phone right now and just understand a bit more about your goals and challenges, because that's going to help me in 3 months' time or 6 months' time or 9 months' time. But I think, again, the KPIs on there's something broken at that level as well.
there's definitely something broken at that level. I think one of the other thing, I think for me, it's again, it comes back to that soft skill of it's delayed gratification ultimately, and then it's compound interest in terms of actually then following up with that person appropriately. So one of like the core examples I see is like you call someone and they say, no, look, I've got these three priorities, but in 3 months' time, this is a problem. We've identified it. We will get to it then. So what we do is we park that person and call them in 3 months' time and say, hey, Chris, like, is now the best time to pick up the conversation? They're like, Chris, it was the most popular name in the UK in 1991, which is when I was born. There's a lot of you, mate. Like, what are you, Chris? Who? But what actually like the real juice is how have you appropriately followed up between the first point of contact and now? Even if people do follow up, they're just saying, "Hey, come to my event," and it's like a random event. Come to my sending, CROs. Come to my event on some marketing thing or whatever. It's actually doing more damage than you're doing kind of good. One of the little like frameworks that I often teach on that sort of stuff, nurturing, is like this past, present, future template or talk track where if you're nurturing anyone, you must take them into the past to your original conversation. Like, Chris, when we first spoke, you mentioned this. Then bring them to the present. Right, here's why and based on that, I'm going to invite you to this event on this, which is related to that first thing we spoke about. Then I'll take you to the future. PS, looking forward to chatting to you in 2 months' time, Chris. No need to respond for now. Whereas we're so interested, just to your point, on, do you want to meet yet? Do you want to meet yet? Do you want to meet now? Tomorrow? Like, can we bring that forward? My quota, it's end of quarter. How can I get things to bring, and that sort of thing. It's so difficult with pressure and urgency and all of that sort of stuff. But I don't totally agree with you. Like, one of the things that we did with KPIs and commission was we would there was also like rewards for what we call future meetings that ended up attending, basically. So it wasn't like the biggest reward in the world, and it was weighted. It was like 20% of what that total pot could be. And then what we did to also back it up was we would be like, okay, we did things at team level rather than like reward the top biller with the spiff every month because it's always the same person. We would do most improved, but on specific skills. So we would say, okay, team wise, who's the most improved at converting their nurture meetings, or we called them future meetings booked, but
Yeah, cool.
just stuff like that. So then it actually like made it a thing, but made it team wide as well. Because
Yeah.
top of the leaderboard just they get
Yeah,
everything.
and it encourages the right sort of behaviour rather than just how many calls you made, how many meetings, but how many contacts do we know, how many new contacts we engage at that account, how much how we're multi-threaded, how whatever else, how deep are the relationships versus just what was the
Yeah,
volume and what was the play, how many emails do you send, how many calls you make.
yeah. And then it became really like data driven from the perspective of we like, okay, so last week we booked 50 meetings. For the next 2 weeks, we got 60 meetings that within the next 3 months, depending on your team size or whatever. Right, well, that's this person's booked 15 of them. Probably mention that in our one-to-ones. What are they doing? Is it real? Like that's, and then it almost becomes as an SDR leader, you're almost doing deal management but for opportunities, or you actually are doing deal management for opportunities. And what we found on the back end of that was it was one of the most important skills that our SDRs learned to become AEs. Because then they were starting to manage relationships over longer periods of time. They started to get that compound interest delayed gratification stuff was actually useful. It was just proving it to them in the first place, basically,
Yeah.
that it was helpful. Rather than permanently being on the hamster wheel.
And do you we battle this all the time, not necessarily internally. Actually, we're again, I'm a big believer that once you've got good momentum, pipeline, new data, follow-ups, nurture, and you do that well, consistency kicks in, and there shouldn't be down months and bad months, but there are seasonal trends in certain industries and stuff. But like, how do you tend to combat some of those when it's like, everyone talks about, December's really hard or summer's really hard or whatever else. Like, do you see, do you do things differently as a coach or mentor?
Yeah, well, I think it's about being preventative and proactive in advance, right? So my old boss it was big on going to the gym, and he always used to say to us, "Summer bods are made in winter." What he actually meant was your summer pipeline is looked after by getting on the phones and booking future meetings and nurturing them in February, March, April. So like I think when my thing and what I've observed really is like, yes, you can try and in months, so in August and December, the most like down months, you can react to that in month and be like, right, well, we know that a third of the population is out of office, so pickups will be down by a third, so we need to do a third more calls and that sort of stuff. That's fine, and we can work harder. But actually, like, it's about front loading a lot of that. So one of my best ever reps, a guy called Tom Wotton, what he would do is like he would already be able to like pretty much forecast or semi forecast his month for the next month out. So he would, at the end of January, we'd be sitting down and he'd say, yeah, if I do exactly the same as I did for January, and honestly, he was like a 9 to 5er. Like he almost, people used to think he was like lazy because he was of his like general demeanor, but he was just so thoughtful with with everything that he did. But it was, he would always, just basically be able to say that, okay, if I do everything that I did in January, so just repeat my 2,000 calls a month or whatever that is, this conversion rate, I'll be able to book, say, 10 meetings in month, 70% conversion, I'll get seven ops from that. But I'm carrying over 15 meetings that I booked in November, December, and January, and they're all lining up and queued in February. I'm confident because I've spoken to all of them this month that they're still going to happen, but I'll factor in a 25-30% risk. I'll get 12 show, 70% will convert. There's my 150% of quota for February. So he would be able to really clearly tell me how the last 3 months is contributing to his next month, but equally how his in-month stuff is going to contribute. Whereas what my conversation with most SDRs is, they're scrambling so hard for in-month. They get to the end of the in-month. They go to the pub. This will happen next Friday, end of Jan, right? They'll go to the pub, and then Monday morning, start of Feb, they'll come back in and they'll be like, right, well,
Go again.
again, I have no idea how am I going to get to that. And it's panic stations.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tom was just great. He was honestly just great like that. It took him, it took him a little bit of time to build it up. Of course, it did, right? Took him that initial like 3 months to get to that point. But what he was doing was he knew that if he made 100 calls today as a round number, then he would, on average, have this many combos. Of those combos, some people would say yes for now, but actually, if he had 5 combos, let's say, one might say yes for now, 4 would say no. But in his world, no, he also counted not right nows. So his not right nows were his future meetings. He booked those, nurtured them, and then converted them in the future. So he never did double hours. He just maximized his actual, like, how he qualified a no or a not right now, what that actually meant. It was really, really interesting. At the end of each day, people would be like, okay, we adopted the whole thing as a team, but how he would always be like, right, so yeah, I don't believe he was like, I don't believe sales is binary.
Yeah.
There's a massive grey space in between, and yeah, then the team adopted that as a,
I think it's that part of that's mindset as well, isn't it? A no's never a no.
yeah,
It's that kind of, it's not right now. They're not in market, and it's. But I think it goes down to the fundamental of your, the top of the call is this piece about building relationships, not just calling them back in 3 months' time. That's the next time you speak to them, or 6 months' time. I'll call you then. Oh, there's a lot's going to happen in that next 3 or 6 months. You need to be building a relationship, getting familiar with them, like just keeping them warm and nurturing them.
yeah. I think that's the main thing, right? The like important thing anyway. With all of this, and people, they it's fluid on the other person's side. There's so many things going on their side that you're just not privy to, ultimately. But also, equally, there's so much pressure on your side, and that fluctuates. Some months you feel good and you're not pushing people. Some months you're freaking out and you're like, okay, I'm going to just, you know, and the behavior becomes completely different.
Yeah.
I think that, again, I think it just comes down to this, like that soft skill, that delayed gratification kind of mentality with what I think the numbers are like, what, 35% of every conversation you have is the person will be interested, does have that problem, but equally has 3 other things that they're halfway through right now and need to do before they kind of look at it.
You've done this for a long time. We try and enable the team to think like that as well, and then like look at future pipeline and keep in touches and build momentum for the value that 3-6 months can create. But I guess as a CRO or as a sales leader listening to this and doesn't maybe have that team culture currently, like how do you start going about implementing that or changing culture and mindset?
So to be honest, I can only really speak from my own like experience. I think with it, I think the first part of it ultimately, I mean, it's going to come from the top down, right? Is like if you can say that you care about the nurtures as much as you want, but I think there's a great book by Ben Horowitz where it's like you are what you is it like you are what you do,
Yes,
or
so
who you are is what you do. Right? And it's just like being action led with it ultimately, right? From a leadership perspective down. Then I think once some of the behaviors are set in and you're talking about it, you're then rewarding people on the back of it to motivate those sorts of behaviors with like team based, improvement areas. You can't expect people to go from 0 to 100 with it as a skill, but so that's why I always recommend, what we do is just focus on improvement. Let's see improvement. Let's reward the people who are improving at this skill and able to prove that to us. with extra little spiffs or a little reward, or you can take, a +1 out for dinner on us, or so just small things, right? That just like reinforced what we really wanted to see from them. And honestly, the most important part of it from the top down was we we implemented it or we built it into like our rhythm. So like our morning stand-ups, we would talk about, we wouldn't say how many meetings have you got. We'd say, okay, so what happened today? Right, 100 calls, 5 convos. Okay, on those convos, how many were yes, how many were not right now, how many were no? Of the yes, when is that? Next week. Of the not right nows, what's the plan? Right, here's the action. Of the no's, what happened? Right, and we're talking about that constantly. Smaller other things like, you do your end of month review and someone stands up and says, here's the story of the meeting getting booked. And it's always like some crazy story, like I did 74 dials and I ended up trekking through the Sahara and finally found this direct mail note that I then put, that's, it's like, right, actually like start to get people to say, right, well, actually we've been in conversation for 3 months. Here's the journey. I spoke to them on this first email. They responded saying, not right now. Here's the nurture emails and how I kept them warm, how I kept them engaged, educated them. Then they were ready to buy and they purchased. It's not very sexy, but it is the behavior you want to see. So I think it's a lot of it is like just smaller things like that as well. And final thing that we did was, and this was the most impactful, was rather than us saying, hey guys, follow or copy Tom, what we did, because at the time I was obsessed with Clive Woodward's culture book, right? This because I'd read, I'd listened to his high performance podcast, read his book and stuff like that. I just love rugby in general, or just sport. But so I'd read that, and for everyone who's listening and doesn't know, Clive Woodward he's the England rugby head coach when we won the 2003 World Cup, but hopefully you do know that. But the thing was, he had this culture book, but the beauty of it was he didn't write the culture book. What he did was he got everyone in a room, and in my case, this was the SDRs, and I'd give them a scenario like, okay, when someone says, not right now, how should we work with people like that? I'm going to leave the room. You guys come up with how you guys are going to do it as a team. And then we'll write the rules that you've come up with in our book, basically. So I totally stole it from him, but the whole point was they made the rules for how we nurtured. They made the rules for loads of random other things as well, by the way. One of them was how we nurtured. And then what happened after, we obviously policed it slightly to start with to get the momentum going with the things that I just mentioned. But what the beauty was after like a month or two was people started talking about it between themselves. People started to offer advice to the older people, also advice to the newer people, saying, here's how you should do that. Here's this, here's that. So then new starters just came in and it was like a thing. So it was almost like this self-governing SDR team with nurture at that point. Totally stole it from Clive Woodward, was not my own idea, but worked really, really nicely with loads of other things as well, by the way, but equally with nurture. Anything that I wanted them to do, I just got them to make the rules, because you know what people are like. They like to follow their own rules, but they definitely don't want to follow us managers' rules.
Yeah, of course. If they feel like they've said it, it's their idea. It's always easier to throw it out. Yeah, that's cool. I like that. Hopefully everyone knows who Clive Woodward is, but go and check it out. It's a good book. I read it.
Yeah, hopefully.
But yeah, cool. It's. I think, look, like I said, as we've been talking, like we're seeing it. It's a massive shift to. I mean, everyone's calling it the human comeback. I mean, humans haven't been and gone anywhere. But I think what it is, like you said, is that rise of everyone's fed up of digital fatigue, that AI noise, that just kind of being a number in someone's cadence, someone's outreach. And I think what you're talking about is just outbound done well and building relationships and nurturing. I guess are there any things that you're seeing? Is it still the phone that's the best way to do that? Is it face to face? Is it meeting people? Like what's the best way of just building those sort of relationships?
I mean, I think ultimately it's making sure that you're reaching out to someone who you've actually got a solid enough reason to reach out to in the first place, right? that's like that is rule. It's rule number one, and I think or rule or like 101 stuff. Just because I know the most. I think what we see the most is like we panic a bit. We're under pressure. We're stressed. So what do? We want that short term dopamine hit of I emailed 1,000 people, so I feel like fingers crossed someone hopefully comes back to me. Whereas actually, like what we should be investing in is the kind of compound interest theory of good people, good message, consistently. Usually, you can't see like the immediate returns, but eventually it kind of starts to pay off. Like that Tom Wotton stuff, right? Where like his February commission, he'd already made that in October, November.
Yeah.
It's just I mean, it's age old though. Like this is one example, isn't it, with like booking meetings, but it's literally is like age old with kind of like anything in the world, I think.
Is there? I think given what we just talked about, and obviously there's still a lot of people are tracking maybe the wrong metrics. There's a lot of pressure to like now results, targets, this week's, this quarter's, this month's. Like, in your opinion, is there a KPI that just shouldn't be being tracked anymore?
Honestly, my view is it's not about not being tracked. It's about how much precedence certain KPIs are or are not given. My view and I think actually like it's really difficult to give that a blanket answer as well because each business is going to just be in a different position. My personal view on KPIs, especially with SDR leaders, is focus on the ones that are going to drive the business outcomes that your founder or boss needs to see. First thing first for an SDR leader is like, have you even had that conversation with the top of the business to know where they want to go, like what's important to them? And then are you asking your team to go and drive towards that? Or are you so focused on just booking meetings for anyone that kind of keep heads slightly above water every, 30 seconds, and then you've got to kind of do the rounds again. So like, I think it's really hard to say shouldn't be looked at. I think it's about like, what are your primary KPIs, those 2 or 3 primary KPIs based on the big goals? Are they married up to that? And is therefore your individual team going in the right direction because of it? Or are you accidentally siloing your SDRs or your pipe gen function because your KPIs are not driving towards what your founders or your CRO or VP marketing or whoever it is wants to really see? See it honestly, you see it all the time with especially more junior leaders, right? Where they're so focused down vertically, they forget that their real team now is this horizontal leadership team. They kind of forget to service those people.
Because and also I think that a lot of them have been promoted into those roles. They've been SDRs and they don't necessarily know how to manage yet or coach. They've kind of just been the top performer, so they've just been promoted to that role as next step. But they've, to your point, how to manage, how to coach, how to motivate teams is a slightly different skill set sometimes.
Yeah, the way I think about it really is I'm just like, it's like big goal, then your team structure, get that right. Okay, like get your players playing in the right positions on the pitch, so to speak. Then back that up with your KPIs, the goals, and then the fourth part of that is the commission plan to accelerate. I just, it's like classic timing now at the start of the year. Actually, is everyone's asking me, Chris, like, how would you do an SDR commission plan? And I'm like, have you asked the founder what the big strategic goals are for the business this year? And they're like, why, no. Like, start there, and then think about, are your players playing in the right position to go and do that, execute that, right? And then KPIs or targets that are realistic, and then some commission afterwards. But of course, also at SDR leader level, right, we're getting, or an SDR leader is, the feedback they're getting is from the reps directly most of the day saying, I want more commission, or I want promotions, or this sucks, or that's rubbish, or whatever. So it's kind of like, it's a bit of a bias, like media for them in some ways. It's hard to pull themselves out.
Yeah, it's a constant juggling act. I mean, we find it all the time. I think every SDR leader's felt it at some point
I
of
was
juggling things.
I felt so foul of it at the especially the start of my career, where I was so almost protective of my own reps and what they needed and wanted, that I totally forgot what my boss needed and wanted, because I only saw him once a week.
No, it's super interesting, and obviously, like, so much advice. We could go down so many different rabbit holes talking about different leadership
Yeah,
strategies
mate,
and
no,
coaching. Like, for anyone, like, where can they find you? Obviously, you run your coaching sessions. You're doing like bespoke stuff in teams and in house as well. But yeah, where can people read more, contact you?
yeah, I think start with LinkedIn, right? I think that's the best place. So I'll post every day. The other place is probably my newsletter that goes out once a week. Um, if you just if you subscribe to that, tell me there'll be a choice of telling me what role you get, and I thought well I make the content specific based on whatever your role is. So if you're an SDR, you'll get SDR content. If you're SDR leader, you'll get SDR leader content. That goes out every Friday at 1 p.m.
Nice, genuinely, genuinely worth subscribing to if people haven't already. So we'll put a link in the show notes so people can check it out. But and am I right in I hear on the grapevine you're writing a book?
Who told you that?
What is that? I'm going to cut it out if we need to.
No, I'm messing around. Now, I am attempting to. It's the first time I've ever done anything like it. It's like one of those. It's like it's hard to start because you're just like, what the hell is this? And then I'm not even in the middle, but I feel like I'm in the middle because it's like so messy and like I don't really know what's going on. That's me being honest, right? And then hopefully the finish is good.
No, cool.
I'm trying. I'm trying. It's not for the faint-hearted. I wouldn't. Yeah, it's painful. It's painful. It's the hardest piece of work I think I've actually ever attempted to start. But I'm miles from the end.
I've spoken to a few people who've written books. They've said actually it's like just getting started is the hardest part, and just kind of
Yeah.
there's always so many iterations. But I can't wait. I genuinely, if it's anything to go by your newsletters, your LinkedIn posts, the content you put out, I think it's me good page turner. So we'll when it comes out, give us a shout. We'll get you back on.
Hey, I will. I mean, it's one name in the mix is relationship revenue. I don't know. We're like, I'm not very, I have to see. But yeah, no, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I'll let you know. But yeah, some point this year it'll be there.
No, appreciate it. Well, thanks for coming on, and we'll obviously good to catch up soon.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Cheers,
I've loved
Chris.
it. Thanks, man.